Welcome to Tell Us Something. My name is Mark Moss. I'm the Executive Director of Tell Us Something, and I'll be your host this evening. This presentation is being recorded by Missoula Community Access Television as part of a media assistance grant donated to Tell Us Something by MCAT. Betsy, it's a push. Right here. Yeah. We gather on the ancestral lands of the Salish, Kootenai, and Pendlay peoples. These lands have been inhabited for millennia, shaped by the wisdom and stewardship of the First Nation peoples. We acknowledge the historical and ongoing human trauma inflicted upon indigenous communities, including the forcible removal from their lands, the destruction of their cultures, and the systemic injustices that continue to persist. As we honor the indigenous people who have called this place home, let us commit to learning from their traditions and values. There are a couple of tangible ways to do this in the next few months here in Missoula. At the Missoula Public Library on Saturday, September 28th, you can check out the Bookmobile launch party in the parking lot at the library. Director Slavin Lee will share insights about the Bookmobile's role in bringing library services to every corner of our community. Local artist and descendant from the Crow tribe, Stella Nall, will be there to talk about her concept for the vehicle's exterior design, which she painted. And on Friday, November 1st, the Missoula Public Library hosts a First Friday event highlighting Native art and culture, showcasing the library's permanent collection. That event kicks off 4 weeks of programs celebrating Native American Heritage Month. A tool will be installed in the Harrison Children's Library. They will unveil an exhibit of the Salish Kootenai seasonal round that gives children a new interactive learning tool. They will also debut a new collection of indigenous books and materials. Stop by the library or visit missoulapubliclibrary.org to learn more. Some housekeeping stuff to start us off. Tell Us Something stories sometimes contain adult themes, and storytellers sometimes use adult language. Thank you for choosing to join us this evening. I know that you have many options regarding how to spend your time and money, and I'm grateful that you have chosen to be here now. Here's what you'll experience this evening. Usually we have 8 storytellers. Tonight we have 7 because one of them had a family emergency, had to go back east. 7 storytellers each have 10 minutes to share their true personal story from memory on the theme, Never Again. Storytellers are selected from the community. You can do this too. We announce the theme and people audition. They call a pitch line. You can go to tellussomething.org, tell a story to learn all about it. If you're deaf, you can also email info@tellussomething.org to pitch your story. We have a selection committee. We usually get about 30 pitches for the 8 storytelling slots. And then the selected tellers work one-on-one with me to craft their story, and then we have a group workshop. It's quite amazing, actually. Oh, so people are going to ask me, like, I'm holding my hand like this a lot tonight. I broke my elbow. So I've got decent mobility, but I can't really shake your hand or lift anything. So that's why. That's not because I don't want to touch you. I'll shake your hand like this. I figured I should just say that. Now, let's get grounded. We're going to take 3 deep breaths together. And on the 3rd breath, I want you to hum as long as you can. It sounds really cool. Ready? Deep breath. It is important to actively listen to one another, join together, and support one another by sharing stories. When we do this, we can better connect with our individual stories and with each other. This is your community. These are your stories. The stories you hear at each night at Tell Us Something are by and for members of your community. Our storytellers tonight have worked hard to bring you their stories. Let's agree to give them the respect that they deserve by actively listening to them. Please, I should do this too. Silence your phones and other mobile devices. You came to listen, let the listening begin. Thank you for your support of each other and of each other's stories. Tell Us Something believes that everyone has a story and everyone's story matters. Our first storyteller tonight is James Crosby. The oldest and tallest among dozens of first cousins, James Crosby oddly and infuriatingly found himself outmatched in many athletic events. Hand-eye coordination eventually caught up, but not before leaving behind scores of nicknames. Stone Hands, Butterfingers, Flood Pants. All apt descriptions of his athletic prowess and giraffe-like physique. Tonight you are invited to delight in his discomfort, because if you can't be good, you can at least be entertaining. Please welcome James Crosby.
Someday, you're gonna be cool. That is what the rebellious older sister says to her younger brother towards the beginning of Almost Famous. My rebellious younger sister did not share that same positive outlook. I had no shot at being cool. All the things you needed to do to be cool, I was not good at. You see, when I turned 13, I had gone through a growth spurt that was kind of like one of those Play-Doh pasta presses. My limbs just shot out of my body. And I was a total liability on the sports field. I was kind of like if the wacky inflatable arms guy had a jersey on. Nice defense, James. I'm on your team. Well, so I had yet to find my thing. I had yet to find the thing that would make me cool. But if I was signing your yearbook headed into the summer that I turned 13, I knew that my time was coming because I was looking forward to sailing camp. Sailing camp, last summer, this was when I was 12, I had gone for the first time. It was the Chesapeake Bay, and you couldn't have been further from the ocean. It was great because I had just started watching Shark Week, so sailing was not a great choice, but we overcame that because, my goodness, I got it. Port side, port, P-O-R-T. That's left, L-E-F-T. Nice. Starboard, I like starbursts. I open them with my right hand. Starboard, starburst, right. Yes, I got it. I could tie some knots. Like, all right, that's pretty good. And when we finally got into the boats, I kind of understood how the wind worked. And boy, that feeling when you got going downwind and you tacked, so the wind caught the other side of the sail, and the boom swung over your head and caught the wind, and you felt the power of the boat surge forward, the sun on your face, the wind, the sound of the water on the hull of the boat. I was in it, and there was nobody else I could disappoint. It was just me out on my boat, the captain of my craft. It was great. The things that I had to endure with sailing camp also included golf. It hurts when you swing and whiff. It hurts even worse when you hear somebody behind you go, ooh. And then there was tennis. Tennis, I was the only camper to ever lose an entire game on the serve. I was serving up nothing but disappointment. I was so bad that after I lost this entire game, I went to practice my serve against the fence, and I just hit the ball straight over the fence, across the road, into the pool. Nobody wanted me on my team. Nobody wanted me on their team. I didn't want to be on my team, let's be honest. So finally it came time to sail, and I was so excited. Except as a camper, I was there towards the end of the summer. So a lot of the other campers, they were there the whole summer. And this summer that I returned, I noticed that the people I had been sailing with last summer had moved on to bigger boats. Suddenly the people around me were a lot smaller. And when I went to set up my boat that year, I noticed that the mast was kind of short. In fact, the whole gear was unusually easy to carry over. And when I finally set up my boat and shoved offshore out into the great wide open of the Chesapeake Bay, once again, this is far from the ocean, you could probably stand the whole time, but there I was, out on my boat. And when I went to tack, to turn the boat, when the boom was supposed to go over my head, this time it hit me right in the arm. And I wrestled the boom over my head and pushed it out to the other side, at which point the boat had turned back into the wind and the boom came right back, knocked me into the back corner of my craft, and I took on some water. Yikes. All right, so I'm bailing it out, and the boom's coming around, and I try to push it around, and I fall back, and I take on some more water, and before I know it, I hear the thing that still chills me to my soul. It's the recovery boat coming out to say, hey, are you okay? If you have to say, are you okay? I am not okay. And as they dragged me back to shore, waist deep in water, because I couldn't fit on the recovery boat while they held the sail, the look from my peers was mortifying. I did fail upwards, though. I became somebody else's problem. I was too big to sail, so they put me in the bigger boats. That didn't make me a better sailor. Now I just had two other people in the boat with me. Luckily, they were also bad at sailing. So I wasn't really letting them down. We were all figuring it out. Well, at the end of the week, it came time for the Gibson Island Regatta, and we had accomplished nothing. In fact, our boat was so bad that by the time we thankfully crossed the finish line, the other boats were already de-rigging up on the beach. But there were only 3 boats in the race that day, so we got a medal. I still felt like a loser, but I was so bankrupt of mojo that when the cute girl at camp asked me to go to the dance, I said no. Because once again, the wacky, wavy, inflatable arms guy was not on the dance floor, I promise. So I vowed at that time I would never sail again. Until years later, I had become a lifeguard. Now, I became a lifeguard because I thought lifeguards were cool. And in a pool, I didn't really have to swim because I could stand just about everywhere. So I had become a lifeguard, and I took it very seriously, and my sister was also a lifeguard, and she could assure you that I was still not cool. And one day, I met a guy who would change everything. I saw this guy get up onto the diving board with his son and throw his son from the diving board into the water. And from across the pool, I was like, it's time, I gotta go. So I went cruising, sir, and his son was flopping in the deep end, looked like he was drowning, and as I get closer, he pops his head out of the water. He's got this huge smile on his face, and he's swimming. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, what's happening? And the guy on the diving board's laughing, and he's laughing. He says, hey, it's okay, we do this all the time. This is my son, Josh. And Josh has cerebral palsy. He can't get around great on land. But when he's in the water, he can do his thing. And Josh is a daredevil. He doesn't want to get in through the shallow end. He wants to get chucked in to the deep end. So it turns out Ross says, hey, we're looking for lifeguards. Are you looking for some extra time, some extra help? And I said, yeah, I think that could be cool. And he says, actually, it's a windsurfing program. Do you know how to sail? Well, Ross, I got third place in the Gibson Island Regatta. So I show up for my first day on the job. Meet the other instructors. They're all really cool. We're all getting along. And this camp is for kids with disabilities. And the whole thing is to get them out on the water, to get them to move in ways that they can't on land. And my job as a windsurf instructor is to use this adaptive windsurfer. It's two long, skinny windsurfers with a sheet of 4-foot by 8-foot plywood in between. It has two sails. The front sail is for the instructor to work the sail, catch the wind, and move us around. The back sail, a much smaller one, is for our athletes. Kids in wheelchairs, kids that can't move around. Sometimes the only thing they can move is one finger. And my job is to get that one finger on the boom so that they can feel the wind catch the sail. They can feel the boat surge across the water. They can hear the water on the hull. And if the wind moves the wrong direction, I'm there to block the boom. That was something I was super qualified at. So whatever it took for me to get to that point was something I was happy to endure, because the look on those kids' faces made it all worthwhile.
Thanks, James. I forgot to tell you all about one of the things that happens to tell us something, and it's that gong. That doesn't mean get off the stage. What that means is the storyteller has 1 minute remaining. And my friend Marissa is the timekeeper. That's Marissa. Our next storyteller is Aaron Miller. Aaron was born and raised in Missoula and currently goes to Big Sky High School. He loves dogs, performing, being outside, and making close friends. Aaron tries his best with work, people, and even himself. He works a summer job as a camp counselor for Missoula Parks and Recs. Aaron has had 4 family members participate in other Tell Us Something events, and he is the 5th family member to do so. Please welcome Aaron Miller.
Sorry, I was laughing too hard from James's story. So I have less of a story and a little bit more of a statement. So, a lot of people think of mental disabilities, such as autism, ADHD, as bad. But I'm going to say they're not. And I'm not saying that because I have one of my own. I'm saying because it's true. And here's why. So when I was 4, Mom had just found out that I had autism. And she had absolutely no idea how to react. My brother was born 3 years before I was, and he does not have anything like autism or ADHD or even anything that he got later in life, like PTSD or anything like that. So Mom had no idea how to react. A couple weeks later, Mom got me into private speech therapy in order to improve some of my speaking, reading, and writing. And Mom was also told that I was not going to be able to read or write in my life when she first found out I had autism. So a couple weeks later, she signs me up for private speech therapy in order to improve my speaking, reading, and writing, because I was already doing it, but I sucked at it because I was 4 years old. So I was not happy. I did not think it was for me because I thought it was stupid. So I was not looking forward to the first day. So we first go in and we're brought into this really small waiting room. And to the left is a hallway that leads to a bunch of other people's offices. And then straight ahead is a hallway to the back of the building, which is like a playroom. So I get in, and after waiting a little bit, I get introduced to a mentor named Margaret. And she takes me and my mom over to her office down the left hallway, and then she starts asking Mom a couple questions. Mom starts asking Margaret a couple questions, and then she starts asking me a couple questions. And then at some point, she had Mom leave the room. This was when I was extremely uncomfortable. I did not get defiant, which is good, but I was still very uncomfortable. So Mom leaves the room, and on the inside I'm like, help! So Margaret continues to ask a couple questions, such as, spell this, pronounce this, can you write this down? And it wasn't that long of a trial. Once we were done, I was excited that I was going to be going home because it was all over, and then Mom broke the news to me and said that I had to come back. I did not want that to come. And then I found myself a couple weeks later back into the building with Margaret, with Mom not in the room, and I still thought it was dumb. At this point, Margaret started doing something that she did consistently almost every time I saw her. She would show me an iPad, and on it would be an animated sequence. Picture you're in a classroom and you're taking any kind of test, math test, history test, whatever. You're taking a test and you need to sharpen your pencil because it just broke. But the teacher said that you can't get up. So you can't get up and sharpen your pencil, even though you had just asked the teacher. So you either have the option to get up when the teacher isn't looking and sharpen your pencil, kindly ask again if you can sharpen your pencil, or just get up and start screaming. I first had no idea what to do with these situations because they were always the same thing. It was always an animated problem comes up, and then it gives me 3 choices, and one of them's correct. I had no idea what to do with these because I had just started kindergarten. So Margaret started guiding me through them. And when I started to learn what the right answers were, I started clicking the wrong answers on purpose. I was always like, okay, it's not okay to yell. I'm gonna click the yell button, boink. And Margaret always had to tell me that that was wrong and always had to tell me why that was. And then she started doing a sort of reward system. Every time I got one of them right, she would give me access to this Batman set that was in the corner of her room. It's like a Barbie doll house, but it's the Batcave, basically. So I would get one right, and then let's say she gives me like the Batman action figure. And then I get another one right, and she would give me, let's say, one of Batman's gadgets, and so on. And I started to enjoy it, and I actually started to learn. And Mom started to find me speaking, reading, and writing over time. Eventually, I started seeing someone else named Ed. And he worked a little differently. So something that he did most of the time was he would turn on his computer and he would open a Google Doc and then he would turn on the text-to-speech setting. And then what we would do is that we would have a normal conversation with each other, and then he would see how much I was talking and how well I was talking. My little kid brain exploded when I found out that it operated by my voice. He turned it on and I was immediately like, "Hi, my name's Aaron. How are you?" So we did that a couple times, and I started to have fun at speech therapy because I saw people like Ed, where we had fun on the computer. I saw people like Margaret, where I got to play with her Batman set and go through her iPad and stuff with those animated things, whatever you want to call them. And I also saw someone else named Alana, but the problem is that I saw her the least, so I don't remember what she did. But she's going to be important later, so keep her in mind. I'm not joking when I say that. So about 6 years later, I took a break from private speech therapy, and at this point, I had moved across town. My family had just met another family, and then we moved in, and now we're just one big happy family, as they call it in the Disney things. So we move in together. But in the process of moving, I had to switch schools. I went from Lolo to the other side of Missoula near the airport. So I had to go from Lolo School to Hellgate Elementary, and things got a little rough from there. 5th grade was my first year there, and kids would immediately start going up to me, and they would find out very quickly that I had autism. And when they did, they would avoid me. They avoided me, they would lie to get away from me, and I would even get home sometimes crying because I would always thought I had no friends or anything. But over time, I actually managed to find friends, and those friends even doubted me at first. So I still found friends, and everything was going okay. And then COVID came. Yeah, COVID sucked. So COVID came. For all of 6th and 7th grade, I did not see my friends as often as I could, and I was always stuck in classes with kids who always made fun of me. And the worst part was that's the key thing, is that they made fun of me. They did not just tease me. They would say they wish that I got COVID first, and that there were some kids who said that they wish I would even die from COVID. And it was not good. Again, I would get home crying. Thank you. I would get home crying. And the problem was that Mom could not do much because of the COVID policies. So I had to sit through this. But through it all, I never gave up. When I first moved across town, I started writing about my dreams and practice, and I was self-taught writing. I did homework, I did research, I've written essays and everything like that at school, and I've proved that I'm really capable. Sorry, my train of thought derailed. I proved that I'm really capable. I have passed with straight A's since 7th grade, and I'm now in my junior year of high school. So ever since I got into high school, no one has doubted me. I first joined the theater department after hearing what my brother and sister always said because they did theater before me. So I did it, and everyone else was very similar. They had autism, ADHD, dyslexia, all of this stuff. So I fit in pretty well. And I was given a chance. I've had people come up to me and say, "Hey, do you want to be in this piece that I'm doing?" So I have passed with straight A's, and I've proved that I'm capable. And now I am the house and facility manager at Big Sky High School for the drama department, which is really important. So through all of this, it was a rough ride, I will say. Now ask yourself this: is one's disability a chance to improve? Yes, it very much is. I have gone through so much, but never again will I let my disability change me in any way again.
Thank you, Aaron. Our next storyteller believes in the power of storytelling so much that he found a Tell Us Something in 2011. Please welcome Mark Moss. Go to your room. So I did. My 14-year-old self is stomping up the stairs, silently cursing my dad. Some perceived transgression of mine. Maybe I put the dishes in the dishwasher incorrectly. Maybe I forgot to put the vacuum cleaner away after I vacuumed the living room. I don't know. Anything could have set him off. I walked into my room and I punched play on the tape deck. Lights out tonight. Trouble in the heartland. Got a head-on collision. Smashing in my guts, man. Caught in a crossfire that I don't understand. But there's one thing I know for sure. I don't give a damn for the same old played out scenes, man. I don't give a damn for just the in-betweens. Honey, I want the heart, I want the soul, I want control right now. You better listen to me, darling. Talk about a dream. Try to make it real. You end up in the night with a fear so real. You spend your life waiting for a moment that just don't come. Bruce Springsteen. And Bruce Springsteen got me through that moment. He got me through lots of moments in my life. He got me through my first love. The only lover I'm ever gonna need is your soft, sweet little girl's tongue. He got me through loneliness. Like a river that don't know where it's flowing. I took a wrong turn and I just kept going. And so, loving somebody like that so much, somebody's music, you want to see him perform. And Bruce is a poet, he's a dreamer, but really he's a storyteller. And he puts on 3 to 4 hour shows. And I saw him from every tour from 1988 to 2005. Not every show, but I grew up in Cleveland, so it was easier than here. And in 2005, well, first of all, the shows are amazing. And I loved him so much that in Gardner, when I lived in Gardner, Montana, I drove 11 hours. I didn't have a car, and so I was in the back of a pickup truck, 11 hours to Fargo, North Dakota to go see him. You can listen to that story on the Tell Us Something website. I told it a long time ago. I even got to see him at Giant Stadium in New York City. I didn't know I was going to be in New York. This is like 2003-ish in that neighborhood. And I called my Aunt Tina, who introduced me to Bruce, and she was like, hey, don't buy a ticket. And I was like, what? Go to the Scalpers. Okay, so I get on the train from Manhattan, and I go to Giant Stadium, and I walk into the parking lot, kicking rocks. I've got $20 in my pocket, hoping for the best, and this guy walks up. He's like, do you need tickets? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, I go, how much are they? He goes, $30. I go, here's 10. And he's, because you need beer money. So he's like, I can't do it. I was like, okay. And I was like, turned to start walking away. And he's like, wait a minute. I can do it. So I give him $10. This reporter walks over to me. Hey, I'm from the New York Times. I'm doing a story on scalpers. No lie, you can go to the New York Times website and read, a photographer from Missoula, Montana, Mark Moss, had this to say. That's true. But I didn't get to see the Seeger Sessions tour. So in 2005, Bruce put together this 18-piece band, brass band, and did a cover of an album of Pete Seeger songs. And Joyce got to see the show way before I knew Joyce. She was living in New Orleans right after Hurricane Katrina, and she was working at this restaurant right near the track where Jazz Fest happens. She got out of work and she just walked right in. So 2012, now we're married. She calls me at work, Mark, Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band are headlining Jazz Fest this year. The Wrecking Ball album had just come out. I'm like, buy some plane tickets. We're going to New Orleans. So we go to New Orleans. We've got friends there. We're sitting at Louisa's by the track, eating red beans and rice. I ask her, did you buy tickets? She goes, no. It's Jazz Fest. Don't worry about it. I'm like, look, if we don't get into this show, we might get divorced. I mean, it's important. Yeah, I was exaggerating, but I mean, really. I don't know why it didn't occur to me that like I couldn't just go buy the tickets myself, but I wasn't thinking about that. And so she sort of breaks down later, like minutes later, I don't know, an hour later, goes down, buys tickets. 20 minutes later, for the first time in history, Jazz Fest sells out. So eventually, Jazz Fest comes around. We go to the show. It's hot. It's New Orleans. It's June. It's sweaty. There's no shade anywhere except for this one tree. And we're sitting under this tree, and it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and Bruce goes on at 4, and Dr. John's playing, and I'm like, let's go. We should start walking over to the stage. And Joyce is like, it's Jazz Fest. Don't worry about it. I've never been to Jazz Fest. I'm worried about it. I'm like, it's like 3:15. Can we I want to go see Dr. John. I've seen Dr. John, she says, but I haven't, I say. I want to see him. So it's like 3:45. I start walking over there without all my people. I don't know, whatever. They're going to do what they're going to do. They start to follow me. We get to the closest we can get, which is nowhere close. We're going to have to watch the show on Jumbotrons. We're like from here to across the street outside the dentist, and that's how far away we are. And I'm pissed. I'm grumpy. I'm frustrated. I'm trying not to let it wreck my afternoon. I'm trying to be present and get ready for the show, but it's hot outside, and my hand is swelling up. And my wedding ring is stuck on my finger, and it's not like I want to take it off but my hand is hurt. My finger is hurting. It's swelling, and I'm starting to freak out, and people are offering me ice, and this woman comes running over. Don't put ice on it, she says. It's going to make it worse. She pulls lotion out of her purse, and she starts putting it on my finger, and she's rubbing my finger, and she pulls my ring off, and Bruce Springsteen walks out onto the stage. Thank God. She gives me my ring back. I put it in my pocket, and it's a party. Everyone's dancing. Everyone's singing along. Strangers are kissing each other, hugging. Everyone's it's a celebration. And he brings us through pain and heartache and sex and rock and roll and party and just... So that year, Clarence Clemens, the saxophone player and Bruce Springsteen's best friend, had died. And Jake Clemens, Clarence's nephew, had to fill in. And during Born to Run, there's a line, the change was made uptown and the big man joined the band. And at that moment, the show stops. And a big slideshow shows up celebrating Clarence's life. He finishes the song, and then he sings another song about the dead. If you're here, they're here. If you're here, they're here. If you're here, they're here. We're here together. It's like a gospel revival. So we walk out of the show, and Joyce goes, I get it. I get it now. So we drive to Portland and see him there. And we get into the show. we're close this time. We're right up near the stage. And at that moment where the change was made up time and the big man joins the band, like, he stops the show again, except this time he has this long catwalk out into the audience. And he's out on the catwalk, and he turns around, and he's watching the show, with us, the slideshow. And then this magical thing happens. He falls backwards off the stage into the crowd. The crowd catches him, and he's crowd surfing. I knew you were going to do that. Crowd surfing across all of us. I got to grab his ass. He gets back up onto the stage, and he's like patting himself down, like, did somebody steal my wallet? Ha. And he pulls out a phone out of his pocket, and he's surprised by it. Someone had shoved their phone into his pocket. And he takes a selfie, and he like throws it to the roadie. The roadie catches it, and he goes, hey, if that was your phone, go get it after the show. And I'm like, you don't get that on a CD. You don't get that streaming. You don't get that on an album. You don't get that even watching a video. That's real connection. And I'm never going to get to see it again because his ticket prices are out of reach. $200. And then add the plane fare because he's not coming here. So what I'm left with is gratitude that I got to see him so many times and experience that level of connection so many times. And one of the things that he says during the show is anybody alive out there tonight? You tell me. Thanks, Mark. Karna Sunbeam has always been her own unique, uncharted path. Her curiosity and spiritual quest have taken her to places that most people would find bizarre, wondrous, or enlightening, depending on their personal life experience. The one word they would never use to describe Karna is boring. Karna's gift and curse is being fearless, which brings us to her story that she calls My Last Jump. Please welcome Karna Sunbeam.
There I was, hanging 1,200 feet above the earth in gale force winds, and this is no shit. And that, my friends, is how a good skydiving story begins. It's true, I was dangling from a parachute in the middle of a storm, being swept up the valley towards Snowball ski area. The next day's Missoulian front page would read, 59-mile-an-hour winds wallop western Montana. Skydiver lost up Grant Creek. It was August 15th, 1988, and what a great day it had been. It was a reunion of the Silvertip Skydivers, which was a club at the University of Montana in the 60s and 70s. The party was happening at Grant Creek in a meadow equipped with barbecues, kegs, and a Cessna 180 that was taking off and landing all day to give these old skydivers the chance for another free fall together. Although I had made well over 300 jumps with this club, I had no intention of making a skydive today. It had been 10 years, and I had never flown one of these fancy square parachutes that everyone was now using. And the ripcord wasn't here anymore, it was down here someplace. And the reserve parachute that you'd used in case of a malfunction wasn't here where you could see it, it was behind you someplace. So no, everything was so different and I was not gonna jump. And then my friends started saying, come on, it's gonna be so much fun. Come on, the sunset's gonna be so pretty from up there. So with that little bit of peer pressure, I changed my mind and was soon donning borrowed gear. I was wearing somebody else's jumpsuit that was too big, somebody else's rig that wasn't comfortable, somebody else's soft leather helmet, unlike the hard motorcycle type helmet that I was accustomed to. My own gear I had given away 10 years earlier, and I loved it. Every time I looked up at that and saw that beautiful white and blue parachute, I felt like I was with an old friend who had safely landed me in so many different drop zones. We had jumped into the Oval at the university, into fireworks stands over the 4th of July, into weddings and rodeos and football games. I loved it. But this gear was so unfamiliar, and it had been so long, that I said to the 3 guys I was with on this jump, today I'm going to dump high, which meant I'm going to pull my ripcord earlier than you pull yours, maybe 1,000 feet earlier, so that I have a longer parachute ride, so that in the unlikely event that I have a malfunction, I have more time to deal with it. So we were climbing into the plane, and my buddy Andy ran up with a hard helmet and said, "Wear this instead, it'll be safer." So I swapped the soft leather one off my head for the harder, safer helmet, and little did I know how grateful I would later be for this kind gesture. We took off, and the plan was to go up to 8,000 feet for a 30-second free fall. But at 5,000 feet, the tower from the Missoula airport called us and said, "If you're going to go, you better go right now. There's a big storm rolling in." So we looked out the open door of the airplane, and we could see these huge black clouds on the horizon. So we jumped. It was incredible to be in free fall again. I had forgotten how much I loved this. And we were doing relative work, which meant we were flying together, holding hands, making a circle that was falling through the sky. Epic. Our parachutes all opened successfully, and I was having so much fun flying this smaller, faster chute called a paraplane. I took the goggles off my eyes and clicked them on top of my helmet so I could feel the breeze in my face. I looked down and I could see the other 3 guys lower than me getting ready to make perfect landings in the meadow, and my approach was all set up. I was going to have a great landing as well, when suddenly I was moving backwards. Now, this parachute had 32 miles an hour forward speed, and I was being blown backwards. And then suddenly I was being buffeted around by this heavy, heavy winds. I looked down at the ground, I looked at my altimeter and saw I had gone up a couple hundred feet, which just doesn't happen with this kind of parachute. I realized that I was in the middle of this horrific storm, suspended from a few sheets of ripstop nylon. It's funny how there's not fear, how logic kicks in when you're making decisions that may possibly save your life. My first thought was maybe I'm caught in winds aloft, so I cranked a toggle, a steering line, hard to make the parachute spiral down fast to get out of such winds. But no, I was still being blown backwards. So my second thought was, where can I possibly land? In those days, at the base of Grant Creek, there were just a few neighborhoods, and then it was forest all the way up to Snowball. So I looked over my shoulder, and in the forest, I could see 3 homes with pretty big yards. And I thought, well, maybe I'll land in one of those yards. And then I thought, no, they're probably surrounded by electrical wires. I've never flown this parachute. It's just too dangerous. So way up there, I had seen a clearing closer to Snowball. And I decided to turn and run with the wind and see if I could make it to the clearing. Now, you know that my parachute had 32 miles an hour forward speed, and you know that the winds had been clocked at 59 miles an hour, so you can do the math. I was screaming up that valley. I didn't make it to the clearing. About 25 feet above treetop level, I turned back into the wind because it would be better to land going 30 miles an hour backwards than to downwind it forward at 90 miles an hour. Fortunately, I remembered the tree landing protocol I had learned when I trained with the Silvertip skydivers back in 1970. You cross your legs like this and your arms like this, because one of the many bad outcomes of this situation was that I could land on top of a dead lodgepole pine, skewered through some vulnerable body part, and bleed to death. But no, I was crashing through the lodgepole pines. Branches, debris, twigs going everywhere, and I remember thinking, damn, I wish I was still wearing my goggles. I thundered in and landed hard on the ground, feet, butt, head, hard enough to crack my pelvis. And without that helmet, I wonder if I would have cracked my skull. The wind was so intense that my parachute was still inflated, and it was dragging me through the trees. And I reached up and started pulling the harness down. And then the harness is connected to the parachute by shroud lines, and I'm pulling the shroud lines down, trying to collapse the parachute. Finally, I got it deflated, and I scooted back and laid on top of it so it wouldn't reinflate. Eventually, the wind subsided. I tried to stand up, and that's when I knew my leg was broken. So there's nothing I could do but wait. As dusk approached, trying not to think of lions and wolves and bears, oh my. And with a little prayer in my heart that went something like, God, if you get me out of this one, I promise never again. Meanwhile, back at the party, that storm hit hard and fast, and shit was being blown all over the place. And my friends saw me being blown away. So they jumped into their vehicles and raced up the road to rescue me. Now, in one of those 3 homes I had seen from the air, a family was gathered out on their front porch watching this spectacular storm, and they saw me fly by. And then a little bit later, they saw my friends drive by. So they started shouting, he went that way. Lucky me, at least they would be looking on the correct side of the road. It was probably over an hour before they found me, and all I can say is thank God for shock. And when they did find me, they showed me this big branch that I had apparently broken off a tree, which had apparently broken my leg. I call it a limb for a limb situation. The firemen carried me out of the forest and drove me to the emergency room at St. Pat's Hospital. And I didn't know if the medical insurance I had at my job would cover a skydiving injury. So I told them that I'd been playing Frisbee. And ran into a bench. I also didn't know that search and rescue had been called out to locate me. So you can imagine my surprise when this burly sheriff's deputy comes walking into the exam room. So, broke your leg, she said. Mm-hmm, I nodded. And you were up Grant Creek, were you? Mm-hmm, I said. And you were playing Frisbee, were you? Mm-hmm. And you ran into a bench, did you? Mm-hmm. Low-flying bench, she asked. And that's no shit.
Thank you, Karna. And thank you to all of our storytellers so far tonight. Thank you to our American Sign Language interpreters. And thank you for being here. Without your love and your open hearts and your respect and your very presence, tell us something can't happen. Thank you to our story sponsors, the Good Food Store and Parkside Credit Union, helping us to pay our storytellers. Thank you to our accessibility sponsor, SBS Solar, allowing us to hire American Sign Language interpreters. And thank you to our media sponsors, MissoulaEvents.net, Missoula Broadcasting Company, including ESPN Radio, the Trail 1033, Jack FM, and Missoula's source for modern hits, U104.5. Thank you to our in-kind sponsor, Float Missoula, and our in-kind sponsor, Joyce of Tile. When you patronize these businesses, thank them for their support of live storytelling in Missoula. We have out in the lobby opportunities to register to vote if you're not already registered, and that you can buy tickets to the next event, which is January 13th at the merch table. We're going to take a 10-minute intermission, at which point when we come back, we're going to have the audience participation portion of the evening. Thank you so much for being here. We'll see you in about 10 minutes. Welcome back, y'all. Before I introduce the people who are going to help us with audience participation, Aaron, the storyteller from the first part of the show, asked me to say that he's sorry he ran out of time, and he wanted to mention that Ed and Alana are here tonight. Give it up for Ed and Alana. Thanks so much for being here. I'm going to hand it over for 5 minutes or so to Lauren Champa and Ren Parker, who are going to read from the stories that you anonymously submitted. So these are happening nearly in real time. Please welcome Ren and Lauren.
Tiny travel bottles, so convenient. One with contact solution, one with peppermint essential oil. Never again. Our home phone number was 1 digit off from the local retirement home. We got many calls asking for old friends and relatives who lived not with us. After months of exchanging pleasantries with these sweet, though confused elderly locals, we asked the phone company for a new number. No trouble. The new number was actually an old fax number. We would get a call at all hours, say hello, and hear the screeching of a fax machine located in a distance office. Remember those? After a few weeks, we asked again for a new number. No trouble. A new number was published in the local phone book. Remember those? As the local Target store. We got numerous calls inquiring about our inventory, especially during the lead up to the holidays. We dedicated to end our relationship with our landline, knowing that we would never again ask for a new phone number. First time I remember the first time a woman, accidentally mentioned my girlfriend in front of an entire class of students. I lost my train of thought, perilous, seizing the rest of the words in my throat. This is it, I thought. This is how I lose my job. But then, through that jerking terror came the bright eyes of one of my students, a girl who always sat in the back of the class. She looked at me like I was hope incarnate. Only one parent complained, but there was no aftermath, just that girl's joy. Never again will I hide being queer. Everyone else be damned. The girls of the world deserve all kinds of love. Never again. Vote Republican. Listen when someone tells me I am not enough.
care when someone says, I am too much.
I will never again see the 3-year-old I worked with at the children's shelter. It is a strange thing to love someone else's child like your own. I will never see him run into my arms when I step into the living area. I will never again get to play our favorite game, Boom Boom Walk, where I told him and pretend to walk around like Godzilla, sound effects, all over our favorite movie. I miss you and I wish you well. I love you, buddy.
I'm driving home from Portland and I have to pee. I see an exit, but I pass it. I'm almost to Spokane. I can make it a few more miles. Then I come to a complete halt in traffic for 90 minutes. I'm in so much discomfort. I find a bottle. I'm going to pee in my car, I think. Then stage fright hits. What if someone sees me? I can't. I'm going to explode. Finally, traffic moves. I take the next exit and have the best tree pee of my life. Never again will I pass on an exit when nature calls.
Never again will I watch a YouTube video on DIY toilet repairs. They really do shoot water straight into the air like the cartoons. Water effing everywhere.
I got married so young, too young. After a few decades, I realized this wasn't who I was anymore. I still mourn the past, but I love my present. Never again will I do things that I am not ready for.
Eating 1 to 3 entire Dixon melons in one sitting. Although delicious, the explosive diarrhea that ensued will make me realize I'll never again do that.
Never again will I accept the bare minimum, as if it were the prize. I am the prize.
Waking up groggy in a comfy hospital room with my dad relaxing on one side of me and my sister on the other was the worst day of my life. There was a black and white movie playing in the corner and I was staring out. What the F is this? I said plainly. My dad said, I don't know, and then started to look up at the phone like I really cared to know. Apparently it was a 1930s Cleopatra movie and I asked it to turn off. This was the 13th day past my car accident, yet all I remember was driving through the snow. This was the first day of inpatient rehab after having a stroke due to the impact. This was the day I had to be told for the 30th time I would never again see my partner. The winter had taken him from me. Suddenly, it had left me near paralyzed. Never will I see him again.
Thank you, Ren and Lauren. Thank you for everyone who submitted a story. I'm so curious, Ren, if the F word was spelled out. It wasn't. Okay, I asked because Ren is the general manager at KFGM, and I thought maybe she was using her radio voice. KFGM, community radio, y'all. So thank you all for being here. Thank you so much for listening. Where did I put my notes? Oh, here they are. Oh, and I also realized I'm not clapping tonight when I want to because my broken elbow, I don't want to further injure it. I go back on Monday for a checkup, so hopefully all is well. Opening part 2 of our evening this evening is Jesse Ballard, who has told a story at Tell Us Something before. Jesse is a perinatal care coordinator who moonlights as an actor and a birth doula. She lives in Missoula with her husband, 2 kids, and 2 cats. Please welcome Jesse Ballard.
I want you to think back to the last time your car broke down or you were riding in a car that broke down. Think through the steps involved to being rescued. I imagine it was a stressful situation, but probably pretty simple to get rescued. A phone call to AAA, wave down a passerby, call a buddy, and maybe within a few hours you were safely back at home or in a safe place at least. Now I want to take you back in time to late 1980s in a remote area of northern Kenya. Myself, I'm around 8 years old. My younger brother's around 6. We're with my parents, and we had just finished visiting family in a remote area of northern Kenya. We were living in Nairobi, the capital city at the time. We'd finished our visit, we'd packed up our double cab white Nissan, and we were well on our way back to Nairobi. We happened to, hours after our travel, we ended up in this area, part of our travel, called the Chalbi Desert. Chalbi is the Gabra word, Gabra being one of the groups of people that lives in the area, for dry and salty. So I just want you to imagine dry and salty for miles and miles around you. Well, I've set up how remote it is, but here we are driving along, and another car happens to come by us, and they stop, and it's Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, family friends. Wow, what are the odds of that? So my parents strike up a conversation. I think my brother and I are just playing in the back seat, and then they wave, and off the Andersons go. My dad goes to restart the car. Nothing happens. We all jump out of the car and start waving at the Andersons, who by this point are miles down the road in a dust cloud of dry and salty. Well, that didn't work. My dad tried valiantly to get the car started, but it wasn't going to happen. So he makes the decision. He's going to be the hero dad and is going to embark out on his own and find help. My mother, sitting in a pickup truck with an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old, said, "Nuh-uh, we are all coming with you." So we gathered the supplies, the few supplies we had, which included a jerry can. For those of you not familiar with that phrase, it's kind of a big plastic or metal container that's often in the back of a car on safari with extra gas, or in our case, with extra water. So my mom grabs the jerry can, and we start our walk through the Chalbi Desert. At first, my brother and I think this is great. We're skipping, we're throwing rocks, we're having a grand old time. What an adventure we're on. Eventually, the charm starts to wear off. It's made extra irritating by my mother banging on the now empty jerry can. Boom, 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 over and over and over and over. "Mom, stop that, that's annoying." I pause here to have you think of walking a Montana trail where you might encounter something like a bear. What is it that you do when you're on a trail where you might encounter a bear? You make noise, right? You've got your bear bells, you're ready with your bear spray. My mother knew that we might encounter lions or some other wildlife, and the boom, boom, boom was out of protection for us. But of course, I was childlike, blissfully ignorant to that, and just annoyed at the incessant bang, bang, bang. So we're walking and walking and walking, and eventually the sun starts to go down, and we are exhausted, so tired. My dad managed to grab some thorn branches and build an enclosure for us to rest in. I doubt my dad and my mom were doing much resting, but I was so tired and I felt so safe in that enclosure that I conked out. I fell fast asleep. Even though I was only 8, I have this distinct memory of feeling like I was back in my childhood bedroom, even though I was in the middle of the desert in a thorn bush enclosure. I could distinctly thought about the dollhouse in the corner, the horse mural on the wall. And so when I started to wake up from that nighttime nap, I was really surprised to look around and see thorn branches instead of that childhood bedroom wall. So as I was waking up, I start to hear this sound of cowbells in the distance. Ding, ding, ding. So we're all listening, and we know that if there's cowbells, there's humans, there's civilization. So we get up and we follow the sound of the cowbells. And that leads us to this now abandoned old tented camp. But it wasn't totally abandoned. There was a caretaker there watching over the property. And he welcomed us in. He pulled out some cots for us to lay on. And again, we just fell fast asleep. Sleep through the night, and as we're there, he's also giving us cup after cup of tea or chai so that we could get hydrated. And as we're waking up, I remember this, what's probably an old wives' tale, to test if you're dehydrated or not, where if you lift the skin on the back of your hand, if it sticks together, supposedly you're dehydrated. And I thought, oh, I've been walking in a desert, I bet I'm dehydrated. And sure enough, when I lifted that skin, it stuck together. So keep that tea coming, get rehydrated. But as I'm waking up that next day, I hear another strange sound. It's little kids yelling, and I can hear the thunk, thunk, thunk of rocks being thrown up into this tree near my bed. And I look up, and there's a giant snake up in the tree. I was pretty scared, but these kids just kept at it and kept chucking the rocks, and eventually that snake slithered away. So big sigh of relief there. So now we had to figure out how in the world we were going to get home. Well, this old camp happened to have an old ham radio. The problem was it had a dead battery. So these two Samburu Askaris, guards, who were part of the staff at the camp, decided they were going to book it back to our car and get the battery out of the car that we could hook up to the radio and call for help. They did that trip so quick. For my brother and I, it felt like hundreds and hundreds of miles, but they were back real fast. So we hooked up the radio, and my dad gets on there, and we hear this crackling over the radio, and another familiar voice. It's our neighbor from back in Nairobi, placing the order for her tented camp, a dozen eggs and a bag of flour. What are the odds that it would be Mrs. Cotter on the radio? But eventually, my dad got through to friends who were wonderful and volunteered to drive up and help get the car and get my dad and the family back home. Well, my parents decided that another long drive was not the best thing for antsy little me and my brother. So they managed to make a connection with a local pilot who had a little Cessna plane, likely something like in our story earlier. And he flew into this remote area, no landing strip, just a bumpy road, a bumpy field that he landed in. And myself and my brother and my mom loaded into this tiny little plane, which for me was so exciting. We were gonna fly in this cool little plane and get home. My brother was prone to car sickness, which also translates to air sickness. So he's in that plane just trying to hold it together, and my mom's doing her best to distract him from wanting to vomit by pointing out things that were flying by. So we're flying along, and my mom sees this waterfall in the distance. Look, Ben, look at that cool waterfall. Our daredevil pilot decides, you want to see the waterfall? Let's go! Hangs a really sharp right, pulls the plane right up against the waterfall, which did not help the air sickness at all. Eventually, we make it back home. My dad makes it back home, and we are safely under the roof in our own house. And I'm back in my bed with my dollhouse in the corner, the horse mural on the wall. I'm sure my parents were in their room going, never again. But for me, I had a trophy proudly up on my bookshelf given to me by my parents. A little trophy that on the bottom read, Best Walker.
We're way off center. Thank you, Jesse. Betsy Funk lives in the Flathead Valley where, surrounded by mountains, she raised her family. She believes stories are the result of the mischief, wonder, and magic of life, and of a willingness to be a witness to all of it. Please welcome Betsy Funk.
Here we go. I'm from Glacier Country. And for those of you who know Glacier Country, you know that the park calls to us. And often that means we're compelled to go visit her. This was happening this one week, and I was feeling it and needing to go back to Glacier, back to hike. So I made the decision to go one day. I called a friend. I said, let's go hiking. She said, yeah, I'm up for it. Let's go. I said, we'll have to start early because we want to get back in time. She had a baby, and we wanted to make sure the baby got back in time to get some rest. And she says, yeah, no problem. I got this. And so I went and picked her up. We loaded up the baby backpack, the snacks, all the accoutrement of going to Glacier. Of course, we brought our layers and our bear spray, and headed up to Glacier to our favorite hike. Now, my friend is my daughter, and she has her son, and she's excited about going on this hike because she's been doing this with me since I was carrying her in a backpack up the hike. She did it with me when she was a teenager and says, I will go no farther. And she also did it with me and kicked my ass up the switchbacks. So we know it's her favorite. She has a real passion for this part of the park, as do I. So we get to the trailhead. It's about 8 in the morning. We decide we're going to start early. This particular trail takes, on a slow day, about 6 hours to do. It's not extraordinarily hard, but it is touted as one of the most beautiful hikes in the park. So as we're unloading her son, and I'm unloading her, and we're getting things ready to go, I look over at her and I say, Kels, how you doing? She said, I'm good, Mom. I said, so you're sure about this? She says, Mom, I got this. I said, great. Okay, you're sure of it? Let's go. So the trail drops off the going to the Sun Road, and it goes for about a mile into this subalpine forest. And as you step on that trail, the sounds of the road drop away, and you're surrounded by the moistness of bare grass and ferns, a soft foot underneath, and it gradually hikes uphill into these beautiful mountains that compelled us to go and call us. So as we're hiking, I'm realizing this is taking Kelsey a little longer than I thought it would. Now, she's carrying her son, and that's okay. So I turn around and I say, you sure you're up for this? She says, oh, I got this, Mom. So I'm fine. About, I don't know, I want to make a guess, but a mile to a mile and a half in on the trail, it's becoming pretty apparent to me that this is going to be a long day. She's taking a while, and I guess this is where I tell you that my daughter is in 6+ years of living with and gradually dying from glioblastoma multiforme, which is brain cancer. It's terminal. She's been through 2 brain surgeries, 5.5 years of chemotherapy, and a full-term pregnancy. She's a fighter, and she wants to do this hike. She loves this hike. But when you look at her, you realize that cancer, it doesn't take you all at once. Cancer takes you bit by bit, one piece at a time. And I've been watching for over 6 years my daughter die in front of my eyes, one piece at a time. So we're hiking along the trail, and I'm starting to be concerned. It's taking her a while. She's gained a lot of weight with all the treatment. She's slow. She's tired. And I ask her, Kels, we can stop at the Y. It's okay. We've been here. It's wonderful. She says, no, Mom, I got this. So we get to the Y, where she knows the next thing she's going to see are these glorious meadows filled with arnica and Indian paintbrush, mountain aster. And she has a degree in horticulture, so she's jazzed. She wants to see this. So we get to the Y, and I say, okay, we got a choice. We could stop here, go back, have our lunch. It's great. We've seen wonderful things. We could go on up to Pegan, or we could head over Sai Pass. And she says, Mom, Sai Pass, that's the only option. I got this. So we head up. The meadows are there. They're up to our knees in color and riotous glory. It's a misty day, so we aren't hot. It's cool. And the mist has made the flowers scream at us. It's glorious. And I'm hiking with my daughter. So from there, we open up and we go through some beautiful waterfalls and creeks, and we get to the switchbacks. Now, these switchbacks are no fake-o. They're real switchbacks. They go, and then there's the false summit, and then you go some more. At this point, we've been on the trail twice as long as it would take anybody else to be on the trail. I said it was a misty day, so there were very few people on the trail, and those people had long since passed us. Where I thought we'd be done at about 2 in the afternoon, it was becoming pretty apparent that we might be down after dark. We go to start the switchbacks, and it's even more apparent that Kelsey is weakening. She's struggling. About every 10 meters, she has to stop. Let's feed the baby, Mom. Let's take a rest. Kelsey, we can go back anytime. I got this, Mom. It's okay. I got this. On these switchbacks, she finally allowed me to take the baby. I carried him on my back. Now, you're wondering, what's he doing? Well, he was just hanging out. He was cool. He was wrapped up all snuggly warm, and I just kept handing food back there. He was good. So we're hiking up the switchbacks, waiting for Kels, checking in. How you doing? I'm okay, I got it, Mom. Take the next switchback. How you doing? Mom, I've got this. We eventually make it to the top. Along our way, we'd pick up a couple of heart stones, and as is tradition in my family, we put the heart stones on this enormous cairn that stands at the top of the pass. And we put them there to honor those who have come before us and to guide those who come after us. And we hold each other and we celebrate and we embrace and we feed the baby more food. And then I ask her, Kels, if we go back, it's shorter. We know where we've been and we're okay. It's an extra mile, mile and a half to go down the other side. Mom, I didn't come here to quit. I've got this. So I take a deep breath. I say, I'll take the baby. She goes, oh, my baby. I said, okay. She was a stubborn one. So she carried the baby. As we drop down this trail, if you've never been there, you walk through hanging gardens of monkey flowers and orchids, all screaming in riotous color in the high alpine, saying, come have sex with me, please. They're beautiful. And she's relishing in it. She's in rapture. She's loving this. At the same time, her legs are shaking. She's worn through one pair of leggings because she's large and her legs have chafed. She's bleeding. I give her another pair of leggings. She's begun to wear through them. She falls. She breaks her poles. I ask if I can take Otto. She says, nope, I got this, Mom. So we continue down, shaky, knowing it's getting late. There's nobody on the trail at this point. The clouds are settling. It's getting scary. And it's bear 30. If anybody knows what bear 30 is, well, basically, the rule is stay 100 yards away from a bear, right? Well, I have someone with me who's having trouble walking on the trail. And when we see the full-size grizzly bear 10 feet off the trail, and I ask her, can you bushwhack? She says, Mom, I don't think I can. I don't think I can hold myself up. We gotta walk on the trail. I take a breath and I say, okay. So there's this full-size grizzly, 10 feet off the trail. The trail goes on a switchback above the bear and below the bear. So we're gonna cut across a little field to try to avoid doing it twice, right? So I tell Kels, all right, here it is, Kels. I've got the bear spray. And I'm standing with the bear spray. And I go, you walk behind me. And she goes, Mom. I said, just walk behind me because I'm looking at that bear and I say right to his face, she's not gonna die today. Not today. And she makes it. She gets the other side. I start to back up, still holding the bear spray. The bear shakes his head and huffs at me, walks over to a pine tree and does Blue the bear. We made it. We continue down the trail, and it's clear Kelsey is truly struggling. A ranger has been sent in to help us, although what could he do but help her up? Because at this point, I'm given the baby. Her modality of getting down this trail, bleeding and shaky and very unstable, is to sit on every step, slide on her ass, and have us help her up. And then she wobbles her way to the next one, sits and slides. It's getting later and later, and I'm thinking we need to call somebody in. And I ask her, should we call for help? She says, Mom, I gotta do this. I've got this. We make it to the bottom. It's glorious. I'm relieved. I'm crying. The baby's asleep. And at the bottom of this trail, there's this beautiful path that goes down on the river. And I go and put my feet in because I'm an old woman and my feet hurt. And she goes and puts her feet in and she says, oh, this won't do, Mom. And she goes because she's bloody and she sits right in the creek. And she goes, you know, Mom, I don't think I'll ever be able to do that again. And I looked right at her and I said, you know what, Kels? You got this. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Closing out the evening, Sydney Lang. Sydney grew up in Olympia, Washington, and has been living in Missoula, Montana, on and off for the past 7 years. She attended the University of Montana, where she studied communication and climate change. She spends much of her time climbing big rocks and zooming through the trees on her bike. She has been working in the outdoor education world for many years, both in Montana and Colorado. There's a good chance she's coached your kid in biking, subbed in their classroom, or taught them a thing or two about Nordic skiing. Sid loves to eat bubblegum ice cream, practice slackline by the river, play on local trails, and cook dinner with friends. Please welcome Sid Lang.
I'm standing in the middle of a large dining room, and I'm in a bit of a pickle. The problem is there is a cute girl sitting in the corner. And I am in Florissant, Colorado. Well, actually, not in Florissant. Florissant, as of the last census, had 149 people who lived there. It's technically an unincorporated community. And I'm in Florissant, but not really Florissant. I'm actually 30 minutes up a dirt road in the middle of nowhere. And I'm in this dining hall, and I see this girl, and she's sitting in the corner. And I want to go sit by her. She's got this wild mullet that I later learned she's cut herself with a river knife on the Grand Canyon. And she's got these vibrant eyes. And I want to sit next to her, but I'm a little bit nervous. And I'm nervous because on the drive out from Montana to Colorado, I've lost my voice somewhere. Wyoming's long, it takes a long time to drive through there. I'm sure somewhere my voice has taken a stop and not come with me. I get to Colorado, and I have laryngitis. And so here I am, standing in this room, trying to meet a staff of 7 people, small staff, and I can't speak. And so I'm introducing myself, scratching through words, and I'm saying, "Hi, I'm Sid, and I don't normally sound like this, and I don't know what to tell you, and I'm so happy to be here." And it's my 4th time coming to work at this outdoor education center. And we do summer camp, and we also do teaching students. And so I spend the next week during staff training trying to get to know this girl. It's not going well. I'm not really getting to know anyone because no one can hear me. And so at the end of training, we decide that we're going to go all together as a staff. We're going to go into town, the big town. And so we get in 2 separate cars, and I managed to weasel my way into the car with her. And I'm thinking, oh, good. Here we go. Now's my time to rock. And so we get in the cars, 7-person staff team, right? 5 people in one car, 2 people in the other. Here we go. So we get in the old 2001 Subaru Outback, and she rolls down all the windows, because it's August in Colorado. It's still pretty hot. She turns on the radio, and she's singing the whole drive. And my little scratchy laryngitis voice is no competition for the windows or the music. And so I'm silent the whole 2-hour car ride. We get to town, and she has this great idea. We should go to karaoke. Like, oh, awesome. This is perfect. So I get to karaoke, and Big Green Tractor, my typical karaoke song's not sounding as good as it usually does. And I'm up there, and I'm scratching through the lyrics, and I finally, as the night goes on, I get a chance to sit outside with her. And we're talking about how we both have worked at this camp, but we've worked there opposing seasons. And so we've never met before. And then she goes, "Oh, I've heard of you, though." I'm like, oh, God, this can't be good. And she goes, "Yeah, you're patient 0, aren't you?" I'm like, "Yep." So let's go back to 2019. It was my 2nd summer at camp, and I'm coming as the climbing director this summer. And my goal is to get students excited to sign up for my climbing program, because the more they sign up, the more I get to climb, and that's the dream job to a 19-year-old. And so here I am, I'm dressed in front of all of the kids. It's 150 kids. They're sitting in an outdoor auditorium, and I'm putting on an opening night performance. And it's this zany, wild experience, and I'm dressed head to toe in a giraffe costume. And luckily, there is a break in the giraffe costume from the top of my head to the bottom of my chin. It's got this big giraffe muzzle, you might call it, and these big ears. And I'm in a belay system, which is a climbing term if you don't know. I'm wearing a harness, and another person's also wearing a harness, and we're kind of mocking what climbing might be like. And I have no control over if I'm moving forwards or backwards. I'm tied into a rope, and my belayer is deciding how much slack I get. And so here I am, and I'm dancing in front of everyone. I'm so excited. I'm the giraffe, and I'm going to climb with you all summer. Come sign up. And all of a sudden, I turn to the left, and I just start spewing vomit, just out of nowhere. Thank goodness for the open mouth piece, right? Yeah. So I'm throwing up everywhere, and all of a sudden, the crowd of kids just falls completely silent. And a kid goes, "Hey, that's my grandma's costume that you're throwing up in." And so I'm standing here in front of everybody, spewing vomit and also spewing the norovirus, which took over the entire camp all summer. Looking back, it was pretty awesome. You know, kids in the dining hall, they're standing up, and 3 kids are vomiting at once in all different directions. It was a real stand by me moment. We had a barf tally on the side. Yeah, totally awesome. So I coined the name Patient Zero. And I'm sitting here and I'm like really going into this story, like telling her maybe more than I should. And I look over after talking about this and I'm expecting her face to be like, huh. And she looks at me with just this like excited astonishment. She goes, "Well, hey, that's cool. Have you heard of my character Earl?" I'm like, "Oh, okay, we're gonna do this. Here we go." And so she starts telling me about this character named Earl, which is a bird. And the bird danced at every event. And Earl kind of sounded like this. Earl, Earl, Earl. So she's going into Earl, and then I start talking about Granny. And Granny was my other claim to fame at this establishment. Granny is an old character. She's an old woman character, and I'm working outdoor ed season at this time. And so 5th and 6th grade students from the surrounding area in Colorado, they come up, and they spend a week with myself and the other field instructors, and we replace part of their curriculum from the class. So we're teaching it and also acting it out. It's really an odd place. And so I am working out, I'm teaching the homesteading curriculum, and I'm Granny. I'm dressed head to toe in a bonnet. And Granny, I just fell in love with Granny. So I spent 2 months being Granny. And Granny sounded like this. "Hey, kids, welcome on down. Here we go. We're going to churn some butter." And Granny had a really rough season because Granny had Giardia. And if you don't know what Giardia is, it is a parasite you get from drinking unclean water, and Giardia really stays until you take care of it. So Giardia Granny is running around teaching these kids in her bonnet and her homesteading dress. She keeps going, "Granny's got dysentery, where's the chamber pot?" So at this point, everybody has heard about Patient Zero and also Granny with Giardia. And I'm swapping stories with this girl. Her name is Sophia. And we're going back and forth, and just doubling over in laughter outside of this karaoke bar. And we decide that what we need to do is bring Earl and Granny together. And there's a perfect opportunity for that. We have, in this outdoor ed season, what's called the hoedown. And I can guarantee you have never been to anything like the High Trails hoedown. It is magical and wild. All the students are packed into a small auditorium. The teachers are there, wide-eyed, confused. They're like, "This is what you do? What?" And all the staff comes in. We're dancing around in different costumes, and we put on a performance. And every night the performance looks different because we don't plan it. And it goes on for like 2 hours. These kids dancing at the hoedown. And Granny and Earl come out, and they just steal the show. And for the next 2 months, Granny and Earl steal the show every single week. Granny and Earl spend a lot of time together. Granny and Earl also Sid and Sophia fall in love throughout the entirety of that season. Sophia's mullet slowly grows out. My voice slowly comes back. Thank goodness. Good old Larry's kicked the curb. And we moved back to Missoula together. And Granny and Earl still live in Missoula. We've been here for 2.5 years. And we have a pretty darn good time. And I would say we still know how to throw a pretty dang good hoedown.
Thank you, Sid. Thank you to American Sign Language interpreters. Thank you to our story sponsors, the Good Food Store and Parkside Credit Union, our accessibility sponsor, SBS Solar, and Joyce of Tile. Thank you most of all to our storytellers. James Crosby, Aaron Miller, Karna Sunby, Jesse Ballard, Betsy Funk, and Sidling. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. Thanks again to our storytellers. Come back and see us in January. Pitch your story for Hold My Beer. Go to tellussomething.org to find out how to do that. Have a safe travels home. Have a great night. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention, please? We're getting conflicting reports of a possible bear on campus that is not Monty.